welcome to Drinks Coach. Can't remember what episode it is. Been a couple of weeks or a week and a half since my last confession. Hi, it's Joe Wadsack from the Drinks Coach UK on YouTube. You're watching YouTube. Please hit the bell to register for future shows. They come quite thick and fast sometimes. I hope you enjoy the content. And I'm determined to shorten the shows a little bit, can make them a bit more punchy. I think they were getting a bit waffly and a bit long, but I had so much to say, you see. Vinesack, all lowercase, Vinesack, if you want to contact me on social media, or you can actually use Drinks Coach UK, all lowercase as well. Right, today, it's a New Kids on the Block show. I say New Kids on the Block because they're not new kids and they're not on a block. They're sort of I hadn't seen these wines before. Also, I've noticed, having been to quite a lot of trade tastings, many more than I did last year, that I haven't really given enough time to Australia or New Zealand on my show over the last 3 years, and I'm determined to fix that because I fell in love with wine through Australia, and it's my first love. What can I say? I think I need to atone for my sins. It all sounds terribly Catholic, this show, doesn't it? Anyway, right, okay. Today we are showing you Passel Estate. Yes, Stuart and Will, thanks very much for sending me the samples. Stu, you legend. This is from Western Australia. Now, just to give context, those people that don't really know much about Australian wine regionally. Obviously, Australia's a giant, flipping, great, big continent, almost in its own right. And you can fit Europe and a bit more inside Australia. So when people say, oh, I don't like Australian Chardonnay, it's a bit like saying, I don't like Chardonnay anywhere in Europe, which is quite a big thing to say. Or I don't like Cabernet from Australia. The regions are vastly far apart, and they have all sorts of ancient tectonic and geophysical variations. The soils are very different in different places. The weather is very different in different places. If you think about being in New South Wales or down in Tasmania, you've got trade winds, a bit like they have in New Zealand, where it doesn't get super cold, but it can get cold. But you have a constant sort of temperature going through the North Island of Australia because of this. If you're in Western Australia, so you're right over at Fremantle or Perth, people go on holiday to Bali because it's closer than going to Adelaide. And it just gives you some kind of context of huge scale and size. And Margaret River is a wine region which is revered by, I would say, all wine lovers that get to try it, or wine journalists or wine experts. I believe Jancis Robinson once said it was the most beautiful place in the whole world, where she's been trying to learn about this wonderful oeuvre and this wonderful art form of winemaking. And she said if you had to just give one name, it would be Margaret River in Western Australia. Margaret River is famous for art galleries. It's a very salubrious neighbourhood with quite a lot of wildlife still. There's safari parks everywhere. Bloody great big kangaroos can meet you as you leave the tent. Trust me, I know. And also there's quite a lot of money in Perth, of course, because it's just south of the really big mining areas of Australia, and people earn an awful lot of money mining, and have bought houses, and houses in terms of real estate have gone up hugely in value. There's one of the largest casinos in the world, Burswood, there. And Margaret River also has some extraordinary soils, but it's a place where you don't go for your cheap wine, although there are remarkably still wines worth drinking in the UK for around a tenner. You're really going there for your £20, £30 bottles, really. There's a lot of reasons for that, but also some of the finest names in Australian wine come from this region, although quite like Hunter Valley, where I suppose the first region we all heard of when Australian wine arrived in the UK, it wasn't the Barossa Valley, it wasn't Adelaide Hills, it was Hunter Valley, going back to the 70s. But Hunter Valley is probably responsible for something like 2 or 3% of the entire production of Australia, where Barossa Valley is probably responsible for, I'm guessing, 65%. Now, these are really old stats, so it could be completely wrong, but it gives you an idea of difference of scale. And I think that Margaret River, although there are large areas of wine growing land, it's probably responsible for around 5%, I would guess. But when you look at it pound for pound, if you're looking about how much of the top 30 wines in Australia, or the top 2% by value, comes from Margaret River. It's considerably larger than that. Okay, so we're going to start off. Just, I suppose, no, while I pour myself a glass, I'll first of all talk about Passel. Passel is an estate that was bought by an English lady and a South African gent, Wendy and Barry Stimpson, back in 2005. They created the vineyard and winery and so forth as we know it in about 2011. I think there were some old vineyard blocks that they had as well. Margaret River, why is it so special? Why do the wines taste there so good? Well, if you actually look physically at Margaret River, it's a peninsula on the left-hand side of the country, and the earth rotates a certain way. So the temperature of the water off the coast tends to be quite fresh, but also very constant. So you end up with this very unusual or very specific set of circumstances. You've got gravelly, well-draining soils. Does this remind you of anywhere? Peninsula, gravelly soils, lots of sea next to it, constant temperature. It's very, very like Bordeaux, and it really, really is. And the wines are sometimes death-defyingly close in quality. And when you do the game of, oh, where's this wine from? It was Margaret River, probably more before anybody else in Australia, that was able to play that game where people went, no, it's not Bordeaux, it's Margaret River, because they have phonetically very similar wines. They have Sauvignon Blanc planted there, which is silky, like it is in Grave and in Bordeaux, not crunchy like it is in continental New Zealand, for example, or inland in the Loire, because of where it is by the sea. The Chardonnays are silky and smooth, which have kind of created almost their own style of fine wine. But there are plenty of wines in the world by the sea that have silky and smooth structures that are Chardonnay. But it does make me think of things like Walker Bay in South Africa, or Hemelanada, Newton Johnson, Bouchard Finlayson, Hamilton Russell. And these wines have a similarity because of the collective circumstances actually add up to a very similar kind of puzzle. But primarily, if you're going to go there and buy something expensive, it's probably going to be a Bordeaux blend or a Cabernet. And they make fantastic Cabernet and Merlot in Margaret River. I would say they probably make the best Merlot in Australia in Margaret River, partly because they've been doing it a bit longer than everybody else. But also, I think some of the exponents like Vanya Cullen understood Merlot texturally much better than some of the kind of roseworthy big corporate winemakers in Australia, in the central and south Australian districts. So, okay, right. I said I was going to try and make these things quicker, and I'm not doing a very good job, am I? This is Passel Estate Sauvignon Blanc. We're not mucking around. Imported by, as I mentioned, my friend Stuart and Will at Frederick's Wine Company. I'll put details in the info chat, in the box with the comments and everything. But they're based in Reading, or near Reading. Frederick's could be Maidenhead. I'm not sure. Don't know what happened there. The seal came out of my screw cap. But this is not mucking around. It's the same price as premium white Bordeaux, which is a statement in of itself. Anybody charging in the UK 25 odd quid, probably slightly more, for a Bordeaux, for a Sauvignon Blanc, means business. And this is a 2020. 2020 was a very warm year in South Australia and Southeast Australia. I think 21 was a magnificent year. 20 was a little bit warm, but in Western Australia, I think 20 was an absolute banger. Absolutely fantastic, ripe, focused, beautiful fruit. When I look at this wine, this is 2020, right? I've just said that. It's 4 years old. And as I look on my monitor on the screen and I look at my phone where I can see myself in duplicate, which is quite scary, it's very pale still. Very pale wine. If I look at that wine, I think, oh, blimey, 25 quid. It's probably from Japan. But it's beautiful. It's really beautiful. It's incredibly unevolved and fresh, just like a really premium white Bordeaux would be at this sort of age. 2020 in Bordeaux was so smoking hot, they didn't make wines this fresh. This would be like a 2021 Bordeaux, I would say. So I discovered these wines on Stuart's and Will's table, pardon me, at the annual Australian press tastings, which are always around Australia Day at the end of January. So thanks again for the samples. I didn't have to pay what are premium price wines. It's limpid and fresh and light. There's a little part of me that would wonder if there's a tiny, teeny dribble of Semillon in there as well, but I don't know. But I don't think there is. Semillon in Western Australia tends to be quite smoky, quite pyrazine-y. But yes, this wine tastes like, I don't know, if I was to give it a comparison, it would be something like Chateau Olivier in Bordeaux, which is the same money. So, yeah, pay peanuts, get monkeys. I know I say that a lot on this channel. But there are certainly no monkeys around here. And this one would be amazing with asparagus, cream cheese, smoked salmon, that sort of malarkey. Cracking start, although fairly frisky one, you know. Starting off with a £27 Sauvignon Blanc, or whatever it is going to cost. But I think I saw it in Surrey Hills or Surrey Wine Merchants for around that money. Okay, moving on. We're going to go on to the Chardonnay. The Chardonnay is 2018. You see a sort of concurrent theme here. These wines do not only age very well, but they take time to come round, like real wine does, kind of old school. There's a little bit more colour here, I think. Okay, 2018 was a thrilling vintage. I remember in Western Australia, some 3 hours flight away from Adelaide, if not longer. Yeah, it's kind of a beautiful pale gold colour of classic barrel fermented Chardonnay. We've got a pretty serious roster of Chardonnays in Margaret River with things like Cullen's Chardonnay. You cannot forget Lewin Art Series Chardonnay. Virginia Wilcox's wonderful Heytesbury Chardonnay, which I had with roast turkey this Christmas. Voyager Chardonnay. Passel Estate Chardonnay now. Oh, wow. 50 quid, right? This is 30 quid. Pound for pound, I think this is equal quality. But if you really want to just push it over the cliff, and you want to show people that premium Chardonnay in Australia at £50 tastes like £100 Merceau, then go to Passel Estate Chardonnay, available at Jeroboam's. If you live somewhere sprauncy in London, you've probably got a local one. Okay, so should have opened this a bit earlier. I think this actually needs decanting. This wine is still very closed. It's under screw cap, of course. Wonderfully toasty in the background. Yeah, still still not old. I mean, it shows development, which is why you pay for these things when they're 5 or 6 years old. 6. At the stand, this was, I think, the wine that most people were cooing over. Incredible intensity still. Really powerful wine. It's got a lovely beany, mealy quality, which you get from New World Chardonnay sometimes. Certainly a warm vintage. Pristine. Less than 13% alcohol, I think. 12.6. So that's elegance personified. Super concentrated. You're buying this now, already 6 years old on release. It'd be nice to see that slowly evolve and change for another 3 or 4 years, I think. But it's absolutely stunning now. I would put that in a decanter and actually air it, or pour it into a jug and pour it back. Just give it, really wake it up, because the wine is still incredibly robust and cool and quiet, and it feels like it's hibernating a bit. But there you go, Passel Estate 2018 Chardonnay. Woof. Nice one. Sorry, what was the alcohol of the Sauvignon? I didn't look. 13%. So the Sauvignon's higher in alcohol. Those super clean and pristine. Right. The business end of Western Australia. It's the reds. Is Western Australia famous for Pinot Noir? No. But there's always exceptions. And I remember back in the day, was it Wignall's? Down in Denmark, down in the real southwest in the corner, near Albany, there were some very good Pinot Noir vineyards back in the early 90s. The last time I visited Western Australia, a long time ago. I think that's well overdue a trip. It's nearly 30 years this year since I was in Western Australia. Come on, put yourself together, Joe. All right, so proper wine glass. What I've done is I've picked the 2 wines which I think are more likely to find, particularly in Margaret River and in that area towards the coast. It's a peninsula which kind of just butts off the mainland of Australia, which has this wonderful river going through it. I don't know if you can guess what it's called. And it has these wonderful areas along the coast: Williambrup, Billy Up, Quarham Up, all that sort of stuff. And each one is probably famous for something. So Passel Estate Shiraz. Oh yeah, I wanted to give a shout out to the winemaker because I think the important thing about this channel is at least I'm spreading love around, right? And I'm critical where I think I should be critical, and I reserve the right to slag things off because no one pays me to put the wines in the show. Sure, they might give me wines to try, but I reserve the right to go, no, that's shit. I just want you to know that's the difference between me and other social media advertisers out there. That sounds cynical, but Bruce Jukes is his name. He's a very well-known winemaker actually, and worked for some super premium wines in like Napa Valley in California and in Margaret River before taking up reins at Passel. But he looks to be doing some really, really great stuff here. So the first one I'm going to pour, same age as the Chardonnay, is the Shiraz, 14.5%. Yay! We're back into Australia territory again. Caught blind, cut on that. Margaret River Shiraz, I have been very fond of in the past, which is the reason why I asked Stuart and Will to send me this. And I don't remember actually trying it on the day, so this could be a bit of a risk. Could it be? Beautiful. There's a freshness to the colour. It doesn't have the same brickness of a very warm, relatively high pH Barossa Shiraz. It looks more like Eden Valley or Yarra. Just by looking at Shiraz, you can almost tell from the amount of blueness and the hue roughly what sort of pH it is. I know it sounds silly, but trust me, you can. It's about 3.4 or something. It's freshness. I can see it's fresh. And it won't go brown very quickly, like many of the slightly warmer Shirazes in the centre. There's a crack of pepper in there, which I always like in my Shiraz. It's always a good sign. It's one of those things you look for. Maybe in a Syrah from Europe as well. There's black and red licorice, which I love in wine. And a crunch of bramble. So you can imagine that. Bramble, licorice, maybe just a tiny, tiny kiss of like Napa leather in there somewhere. Wonderful palate. That is just the nuts. Oh, it's lovely. The tannins are fruit, coated in fruit. They're not woody. I know there must be some wood here, but it's magnificently managed. I've got a sweet and sour, almost elderberry kind of bitter tannin to it. Bitter's wrong, kind of more like toothsome, sweet and sour. Oh, that's delicious. I would recommend that with something like, I don't know, breast of duck or something like that, something along those lines. Anyway, that's, I think, a delicious wine. 100%. Absolutely lovely. No, it's 30 quid, so it better be. But there are a lot of £30 wines out there that aren't any good. And actually, it's amazing it's even this price when you think about the exchange rates. Australia has a very strong exchange rate these days. Ever since the crunch, they were just better at managing things than we are. And this one would have been 30 years ago, it would have been the equivalent of 20 quid. It would have been 2/3 the price, but they deservedly are both going up in price because they're worth it, but also because the exchange rate is strong. So if we want this, we have to pay for it. That's the tits. That is divine. If you like elegant New World Shiraz, if you're familiar with things like, I don't know, no, don't you decide yourself. Some slightly more polished than an equivalent in South Africa would be at this stage. It's kind of like, it's like Crow's Hermitage had a baby with a bottle of Cru Bourgeois Claret. Does that sound fair? And I don't know, if you don't buy it on that premise, then you're probably not a red wine drinker. Right, let's go on to the last one. I tasted this on the day, and this was lovely because it's 2016. I think the current release of the Cabernet Sauvignon, which is about 40 odd pounds, I think, maybe, is 2017. And this bad boy here is called Lot 71 Reserve. So I assume this is an old block that they had or something, or maybe it's just one that performs incredibly well. Not have to be that old. I mean, they're already 13, 14 years old if they set up the winery in 11. But I imagine just from the colour and the smell that it's made from older wines than that. So, what are we saying for colour? 2016, guys. 8 years old already. Current release. It's a bit like buying wine from Morocco. The wines are ready when you buy them. They've actually got some flipping bottle age. Go figure. I think that's worth an extra tenner. Needs a decant. It's already absolutely divine. The smell, it doesn't smell like cigar tobacco. It smells like kind of aromatic rolling tobacco. Does that appeal? I don't want to put people off. It has this wonderful exotic hum to it. There's nutmeg. Fresh, fragrant nutmeg. Even a little bit of white mushroom in there. There's a hint of tomato, which I like. It's a very, very unusual thing to find in Cabernet, but it works. It's a baby. It's not super tannic, it's just perfectly tannic. Tans are very fine, very powdery. Long, lingering, lots of acid. You know this wine hasn't been acidified because it comes from Margaret River, they don't need to. What can I say? That tastes like next level. And I think if I was drinking that and I didn't pick it as Margaret River, although I think it's very Margaret River in characteristics, I would say it was probably high altitude Sonoma, something like that. Montellina, something like that. Californian, definitely. And Californian Cabernet, you and I know, sort of starts at 3 figures if it's any good, or certainly high 80s or something. So, there we have it. New kids on the block. This is going to be a kind of a recurring thing. The right stuff. So, sorry I did that. Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Shiraz, Cabernet. Today, the one that really made my toes curl is the Shiraz. Absolutely fantastic. But they're around between 20 and 40, 50 pounds for the very top wine. But you're looking at 25, 30, something like that then for the special reserve. There you go. That's 23.38. I think that's a nice length. And I'm just going to leave it there and stop waffling. Or I can carry on waffling. I'm not sure if I'm waffling too much. Just saying the word waffling sounds like you're waffling. Stop it. See you next time.